Welcome to the Growth Guide podcast. I'm your host, Clint Murphy. Every week, I talk to authors, subject matter experts, and millionaire mentors to share the lessons that will help you and me be better, achieve more, and become financially free. Today, I had a conversation with Nick Gray, author of The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, How to Build Big Relationships with Small Gatherings. And Nick provides a simple formula with step-by-step instructions to host small gatherings that will help you meet new people, strengthen your existing relationships, and make you the person everyone wants to know. Enjoy this conversation. Nick, welcome to the podcast. And now you are the second guest that I've had who's on a walking treadmill while we talk. Love the habit stacking. For our listeners who don't know you, can you give them a brief bio of your background up until the writing of the 2-Hour Cocktail Party, which is what we're going to talk about today?
I moved to New York in my mid-20s because I didn't have any friends. And I was like, I should move to a place to meet people. And when you're in New York, I would easily crack 10,000 steps every single day. And you're going upstairs. I lived on a 5th floor walk-up. And now I moved to Austin, Texas 2 years ago. And, I ride my bike. I bought a car. I just don't get the steps in like I used to. So I'm on this walking treadmill to try to keep active. The last thing I did that I think I was famous on the internet for was I made a business called Museum Hack. And I think museums are terribly boring. And so I started giving these renegade museum tours in New York City at the Metropolitan Museum of Art that were not sophisticated. I've never taken an art history class. They were basically just fooling around with friends late at night. And they became popular and famous. And I built a multimillion-dollar business out of hiring stand-up comedians and Broadway actors to lead these tours. They were my tour guides. And we started working at all the major museums across America. And companies would hire us for these team building activities to come and bring their employees to the museum. So that's really how we made our money, was by selling to businesses and companies. That's a little bit of the last 10 years for me, that I started that company as a hobby, as a passion project, never wanted to make it a business, and then sort of a company created out of that.
Which can often be best businesses because then it aligns with your passions, which is exciting.
It truly was. And I didn't leave my job to start this right away. I really worked on it on nights and weekends. And that's the best advice I have for somebody who wants to start a business. Really work on it on your nights and weekends. Grind away and don't quit your day job until people are begging you, until you've got people literally pounding down your door, raving fans saying, come on, we need this product. We want you to start this company. That's my advice.
And then when did cocktail parties become part of your repertoire to grow your circle and to network for you?
When I moved to New York, like I said, I didn't really know anybody, and I knew that I wanted to meet people, but networking events to me just felt slimy and gross, and I wasn't successful at them. To be honest, I've never done well at nightclubs and bars. So I decided instead of going to these bad events, I would start to host good events. I would learn how to bring the party to me. So I started experimenting with different party formulas. And I learned through trial and error, hosting hundreds of events, that there is a way to make an event successful. And then when one of my friends, his name is Tyler, he moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. And Tyler didn't know anybody, same situation. He moved there for his wife. All he knew was her family. But he was like, hey, can you help me make some new friends? I was like, yes, you're going to have to start to host events. I'll show you exactly how. And I wrote a Google Doc for him that got shared around to people over the years. And that's how my book started.
Oh, I love it. And so that's mostly what we're going to talk about with people today, is how they can throw cocktail parties and grow their circle and network, which is such an important part of growing your career and your happiness, having friendship circles, not being lonely. And one of the things that you highlight, let's start with the problems before we jump to the solutions. It's so hard to make friends as adults. So why is that?
Nobody teaches adults how to make friends. As we get older, most of us make the most friends in college or at a new job. And as you get older, I think people retire to the suburbs. They get busy with work. They have kids. They enter relationships. And it's really hard to meet new people, I think. I think I found a way, which is building your network of acquaintances, which we can talk about, that all friendships and big relationships first start as acquaintances, and that there's a benefit to building that network of acquaintances. I'm just really passionate about. I think there is something happening now, whether you want to call it a loneliness epidemic or a friendship recession. There's something happening that over the last years of COVID and lockdowns and isolation and work from home, it really has shifted where we are much more comfortable being alone. And that can be good at times, but it's not always good.
I would almost challenge that part of it, where I don't think we're more comfortable being alone, but we are more alone. So it's that interesting dichotomy where we're the most connected we've ever been superficially, but we're disconnected in the ways that it matters most. And COVID, you're right, has made it an epidemic. I have a guest coming on Sunday, and he wrote a statistic that kids from the APA, American Psychological Association, kids today have more anxiety than psychiatric patients in, I think it was the 70s. So you look at that and say, well, why? If we're so connected, why are we so lonely? Why are we so anxious? And so I think this idea that you have of building acquaintances, building our networks, that seems like the solution or a solution to the loneliness epidemic.
Yeah, to truly hang out and to just connect and to wrap. I was saying that sometimes I feel like I'll have an event scheduled. Somebody's hosting something. I'll be like, oh man, I can just use that time to stay home and be productive and work and catch up on emails. But inevitably, I drag myself out and I go to the event. And doggone it, every time I meet somebody interesting and I come home and I say, I am so glad that I went to that. It's that mental effort and exertion to get in the car, to get dressed, to go out to the event, to strike up a conversation with someone new that is harder than just opening my phone to social media, which, by the way, I don't want to stigmatize the use of social media. I use it more than anybody. I'm addicted to my phone. But I have found such quality connections through these in-person events, and it has monumentally changed my life. My last business, Museum Hack, was launched off of my network of acquaintances. And I've seen all the benefits it's brought to other people that have hosted parties. They've been invited to incredible things. They've met business partners, new clients, customers, romantic relationships, all coming from hosting these gatherings. And the power that comes from being the host, maybe just like you've seen from being a podcast host, the power that comes from being the host is incredible, and anyone can do it.
And what jumps out at me is you talked about the power of throwing them. And then you mentioned that you always have that challenge of getting ready for it and wanting to go to it. So one of your solutions for us as a host is to not throw our parties during the heavyweight days. And so let's start to work our way through formulating these cocktail parties. Why not these heavyweight days? And so what days should we throw the cocktail parties? And you even write down to here's the hours that you should throw them, which I found interesting.
So let me say, first of all, that my goal is to make it as easy as possible for anyone listening to this show to host an event that will be successful and that you will want to do again. Because anybody could come on the show and try to convince your listeners to host a one-time birthday bash blowout that they spend too much money on, they stress too much about, and they wake up with a hangover the next day. By the way, I don't drink alcohol. I use that phrase cocktail party because it represents a lightweight social gathering with low commitment that people know they'll have a lot of little conversations. It's very different from a dinner party. A dinner party, the expectations and the requirements on the host are exponentially greater. And so I'd encourage you to think about a cocktail party because it's easier and you can get 80% of the results with 20% of the work.
And let's expand on that a bit before we come back into dates and hours, because that dinner party element, you also then tend to, if you're hosting it, to some extent, you actually don't get to be a person who's connecting because you're so busy making sure that everything's good. Unless you were to cater the event, you're really spending your time getting it ready.
Dinner parties are way too much work and way too much stress. And the average person I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people, say that they spend too much time and money on the food and the drinks and not enough time on the questions and conversations. I would rather have somebody leave my party hungry than bored. Okay? All my friends and people I know are adults. They can take care of their own food. Let them do that. Do not host a dinner party. Okay? I can't stress this enough. It is a very advanced level move. You will stress about the food, or if you're going to pay to cater the food, that can be very expensive. People don't, the one sort of advice that I do have for people who are thinking, who insist on doing a dinner party, which is just get some Thai food and serve it all family style. So I used to host these masterminds in New York City, and I'd have to get dinners. Let me just riff for a second on why the dinner parties are bad. If you have more than 6 people who attend a dinner party, your conversation will naturally bifurcate into smaller groups. If you have 8, it will split into 2 groups of 4. If you want to maintain a solid Jeffersonian dinner-style conversation of all 10, it requires an extremely advanced level of leadership and hosting that the average individual does not have. It would take a lot of experience for you to pull off a very well-run dinner party. A cocktail party, however, anyone can do, and I've figured out the exact formula for how to do it. You have to think about the letters of my name, Nick, N-I-C-K. N stands for name tags. I stands for icebreakers. C stands for cocktails only, no dinner. And K stands for kick them out at the end. Now, because your listeners are interested in growth, I'm going to tell you all that you need to know from my book. What time is it? Usually it's 2 hours. What day is it? It's only on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night. I find for my events that 7 to 9 p.m. works the best. But that's in New York where things started later. In Austin, Texas, I was shocked to find that people here did happy hours from 5 to 7 p.m. They tend to start earlier, end earlier. Use your own judgment based on what would work well for your community. But you need to have both a start time and an end time. Many events never list an end time. When you list an end time, it encourages your guests to actually show up on time. Because how many events have you been invited to that start at 7 and you're like, okay, I'm not going to show up till 8. And then that first hour is terribly awkward and wasted. When you do a 2-hour party, more people show up on time. They will thank you at the end of the party for respecting their schedules. And they'll just have a better event that you're more likely to do. So that's a top level overview, and I'm happy to dive into whatever else you want.
Yeah, we're going to work our way through all of those. I love it. And you highlighted that Austin is different in terms of time. The other thing I want to check in with you is coming from a big city like New York, how is Austin in livability for you? And how do you feel it is in the differences coming from that big city? Are you glad you made that move?
I love Austin, but I also think everybody should live in New York, at least for a year in their 20s. I lived in New York for 13 years, and it's a really intense place to live. You know, it sounds silly. I have money, but for 13 years, I lived in an apartment with no washer dryer, with no dishwasher, on a 5th floor walk-up, rather small by everybody else's standards. I mean, my kitchen was the size of a small, boat kitchen. It was tiny. My refrigerator was like as small as an Amazon box. It was tiny. I didn't have a freezer. And that is not really conducive to lockdown or to sort of quarantine living, but I loved it. I loved it in my 20s and in my 30s. I'm really happy here in Austin, Texas now. I feel like my quality of life is higher. I spend more time outdoors. It's a little more balanced, so I like it here. Where do you live?
I'm in Vancouver, BC, and Austin is one of the places I'm considering I'll put retirement in quotation marks. So I'm heading there for spring break to test it out, to see what it's like.
That's fantastic. There's a new direct flight between Vancouver and Austin that I don't know if you've booked your flights yet. Are you in downtown Vancouver area or the suburbs?
We're in between. It takes me maybe 7 minutes to drive downtown, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, but we're in the single family zone. So we have that benefit of living in a house, having that space. And technically I could walk downtown if I wanted to. Yeah.
Really cool. Well, there's an incredible food scene in Vancouver. And I'm just going to warn you to mentally prepare that our Asian food is not nearly as good as it is in Vancouver. I love the food scene in Vancouver.
And my family's half Asian, so that does present some challenges.
Yes, I'm warning you.
Yeah, we're going to check out San Antonio, Dallas. We have to hit Waco to check out Magnolia, and then we're going to finish at Austin.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So you talked about the size of the house you had in New York. And a lot of people are worried about, well, I can't have people over to my house and because it's too small or this or that. But one of the things, and I'll read a quote that you had, which was, when you invite people into your home, you offer them the chance to visit your personal space. You reveal more about who you are, especially in a world where digital interaction dominates. A lot of people appreciate this vulnerability and feel more relatable to you. Now, can you dive into that? Because you were saying you were hosting in a very small, intimate space. Why does it still matter that we want it to be in our house and not a barty?
Not a barty. Whenever I get invited to a barty, so a barty is a birthday party or other special event, like a party that's hosted at a bar. And I found for myself, it's a little life hack, that when you invite someone into your home for a party, it turbocharges the connections. Why is that? Well, number one, you get to be generous in the hosting. For $50 to $60, I can buy some alcohol, some mixed drinks, some seltzers, and I can be generous in a way that would be extremely expensive at a bar or at a restaurant to sort of provide for everybody. Number two, when you invite them into your home, it's almost like they're going on a little date with you. They're coming into this private, almost sacred space. And I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but I can tell you from experience that it turbocharges the relationship, that the difference between hosting a cocktail party at a bar versus at your home is massively different. Now, many people do have concerns about inviting people into their home. Oh, my home isn't big enough. My home isn't nice enough. It's not in a nice enough neighborhood. I can say after working through hundreds of people on these issues of not wanting to invite people into their home, I always hear from them the same thing. They basically say, look, people actually respected me more, that I had the confidence to invite them over. I also hear, especially from younger people, that the energy level in small apartments is actually better than it is in these enormous mansions. In small apartments, the energy and the excitement of kind of bumping into people is just palpable. I mean, you can just feel it, and it's very exciting. So for those reasons, I am very adamant that for 95% of people, hosting at your home is really the best thing to do.
So then I'm going to host at my home, and we've got a lot of listeners who are listening, and they're like, Nick, but I'm an introvert, and I can't invite 15 people to my home. And you have a little bit of a hack for that. You say, hey, let's start with what we're going to call a core group or a nucleus of close friends, family, colleagues, before we expand to other great guests. So some things we need to unpack there. What is that core group? What are the great guests? At what number do we pivot and start going to great guests because we have enough core group? And when we are starting that invite process, in what order should we be doing it? And when do we want to extend it to the great guests? Because you have an excellent example of a time that you invited a young lady over to your place, but you hadn't invited anyone else yet. So it may have come across with a bit of the wrong vibe, Nick. So can you take us through what that looks like? Thanks for listening. If you enjoy what you're hearing so far and want me to be able to get your favorite guests on this show, please do me a quick favor. Subscribe to the show and leave me a rating. The 30 seconds of your time will mean a ton to me.
When I first started to host parties, I was always worried. The number one fear that all new hosts have is that nobody will show up. And so in building my perfect party formula, I found that I need people to have the confidence that at least some people will show up. It also gives them the confidence to invite other people. So we start with what I call your core group. These are your close friends, your neighbors, maybe your work buddies, people you feel safe and comfortable around. You will invite them first and test the waters for your date and time of your party. I do that by sending them a text message saying, hey, I'm thinking of hosting a cocktail party on Tuesday night, February 13th. If I do it, would you come? And I don't plan anything until I get 5 yeses from that core group. It is only when I get those 5 yeses that I've unlocked. I say, okay, this party is now happening. And that's when I get to work. I build a little page from a free online event platform to collect RSVPs. And I start to think about inviting what I then call my great guests. That's everybody else who I want to show up to the party. Now, a small warning. For listeners of this Growth Guide podcast, you are overachievers. Resist the urge to make your first party your best party. What do I mean by that? Don't reach from the top shelf. Your first party should be people you feel comfortable around, your neighbors, your old friends. Do not try to invite that person you have a crush on, that boss that you really want to get a promotion with, that neighbor who's angry at you. Wait until you learn the methods and the formula for hosting a well-run event. You know, I worked with this kid who's in St. Louis about 3 months ago, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so excited for my party. It's my first one. There's this girl, we've been on 2 dates, and I invited her. I'm so nervous. I was like, oh God. Oh no, please uninvite her. This is a terrible idea. And he said, why? Why should I invite her? I said, because now you're going to be so worried about how she thinks about your party that you won't be willing to do some of the riskier aspects of my party formula. Things like using name tags, things like using icebreakers to stop the party and interrupt to run a group activity. You'll be so nervous that you will want to impress her that you won't be willing to take the risks to pull those off. I've worked with enough people to know that that is a key piece of advice. Do not make your first party stressful. Keep it a low stakes affair. Is there some psychology behind that, Clint, that you've heard, whether it's from Atomic Habits or habit stacking or something, that basically just says, look, let's get our wins early?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going on a podcast later tonight to talk about resolutions and goal setting and habits. And number one rule of everything is you always start small. And so I haven't read Atomic Habits yet, but I did a quick little bit of research and it aligns with everything I've ever done in life and learned about growth and habits. Is you start with the smallest increment you possibly can and you grow incrementally slow. So absolutely it makes sense. We start with, because what you want to do is you want to succeed. So you start with that easy party. You succeed. And now what you're done is you've told yourself subconsciously, I can throw a cocktail party. So you throw a little bit of a better one, then a little bit of a better one. 10 later, people look at you and you're the cocktail party guy or you're the cocktail party gal because you've now done it 10 to 20 times. But that first one, to your point, I wrote down, start small. You play small ball until you can play big ball, and you just grow it incrementally until it snowballs into a big ball.
To give yourself that confidence to start small and to keep it easy, right?
Yeah, and it's in everything you do. When you want to become a runner, you run for 5 minutes and then you walk, right? You don't start with a marathon. When I started, eventually I ran an ultra marathon, but the first run was a run around the block. It was like, okay, I'm chubby, I'm overweight, I'm out of shape. I want to run. I'm going to run around the block and then I'll walk home. So you start as small as you can.
Someone gave me some good advice. They said, if you're trying to get people to read your book, tell them just to read 6 pages. anybody can read 6 pages, right? And the psychology behind that is like, oh yeah, like I can do that. And then inevitably they'll keep reading. But the idea, just read 6 pages. I'm going to challenge myself to try to read more books this year. So I'm going to think about that for myself. Let's just sit down and read 6 pages now. Can I read 6 pages? So I'm going to think about that myself in the start small concept. So do that with your party. Start small.
I'm trying to recollect her name. There's a woman who's famous now, and she said it at the end of her TED Talk. She threw out this concept of the 2-minute rule. And it was at the end of her talk, and it wasn't just an add-in. And it was, if you want to do anything, you do it for 2 minutes. Because the idea is, at the end of that 2 minutes, you keep doing it. You don't want to work out? Just go to the gym, do 2 minutes. You'll do your hour-long workout. Just read for 2 minutes. You'll read for half an hour. So it's an absolute winner of a plan. Or book guests on the podcast who wrote a book. Because, well, you should. I've heard that not a lot do, but you should read the book before they come on the podcast. So you automatically have more books you're going to read during the year. That's my hack, Nick.
That's smart. I like that.
So you said 2 things in there that we're going to dive into. And one thing that you just passingly said was, this is the message I send to friends. And I want to hone in on that message because it was short, tight, and it was very specific, which seems to be an important key to that message. So can you share again what that message to your core group is, and then we can break it down into why it's that message?
Yes. So the message I would send to my friends, and by the way, within my book, there's a series of many scripts, the exact words and language that you can use for all these party invitations, from what to say to your first guest who arrives to how to kick people out at the end. The message that I would send to my core group would be the following. I'm thinking about hosting a cocktail party on Tuesday, February 13th at my house. If I do it, would you come? There's several things that are happening, but I'm listing the specificity, I'm listing the date, I'm listing the location, I'm telling them what it is, and then it's a direct ask. If I do it, would you come? That's really important. That is the commitment that you're asking for.
If I do it, would you come? I'm hosting a cocktail party. And the key there is, this is your core group. So they've likely been to a lot of your cocktail parties. They know what they're in for. They know what the experience is, or they've never been.
For most of the readers, my book was built for people that are never hosting before. It's the very first event that they're ever hosting.
That's true. Yes. So the first time we do this.
So we only ask our core group and our close friends that idea of, if I do it, would you come? The message changes. When it's for your great guests, then you'll say, I am hosting a cocktail party, because now you've gotten your 5 yeses. You have the confidence, you know that you're actually going to host. So the message for your great guest changes, says, I am hosting a cocktail party on this date, this time, this location. Can I send you the information? It's not, will you come? It's not, do you want to come? It's not, are you available? It's, can I send you the information? Now, most everybody will say, yes, you can send me the information. Or if they're not available for sure, they'll say no. But if they're on the fence for a maybe, then they'll say, yeah, send me the information. That's when you send them a link to the RSVP page, which through a variety of things like social proof, showing the other attendees, things like that, they will be very inclined to say yes, and then to come and show up to your party. But the wording changes. There's little tweaks that we do. For example, one is that if you're struggling with people and you can't get enough, you can't get to 15 yeses, then I will have people ask people and say, hey, I really need your help. You're one of my core group people. You're a close friend. Can you bring somebody? Who will you bring to the party? Not who will you invite to the party? Who will you bring to the party? There's a difference in, can you invite someone else? Of course I can invite. But can you bring someone? The action that I want is for them to bring someone, not to invite somebody. It's a small thing like that, but through testing hundreds and hundreds of parties and helping almost 180 people now host their own party, I found that those words do matter.
Yeah, it's much more action-oriented. It's direct action versus passivity. So someone can be passive and say, yeah, sure, I can throw out 3 invites. but I'm not promising anything, where you're saying, who will you bring? And now they're saying, okay, I've got to get. I don't have an ask. I've got to get.
Exactly.
Love that. So we're going to have no-shows. So that always happens. How do we use reminders to reduce the no-shows? And like, if I want 15 people to come, how many invites do you estimate I'm going to have to send out to get 15 people to be at the party?
I'm so passionate about this, about the attendance rate and the no-shows and things, because I've really worked hard to boost that. So first of all, how many do you have to invite? Even myself, I tell you, it varies from person to person and town to town. In a town with not a lot going on, you'll have an extremely high hit rate. In busier towns like New York, Austin, and Vancouver, people are busy, and so things will happen. Even in my world, if I want 15 people to come, I have to invite 30. It's just how it works. I need to invite twice as many people. However, I've talked to people in Waco, Texas, in Dallas, and other places across the country. They'll say, yeah, you know what? I invited 18 and 21 showed up. Everybody said yes, and some brought a friend. And so that does happen. And especially in sort of older communities, in towns with not as much going on, especially when you give people the full 3 weeks notice, what I call the party runway, giving people plenty of advance notice to make it easier for them to say yes, then you do have a much higher number of people who will say yes. Now, about the attendance rate, readers of my book, based on the surveys that I've done, are reporting a 93% attendance rate.
Well, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. For those that say yes and who actually follow through an RSVP, 93% of them show up. And why is that? Because we use that first one. I'm thinking of hosting it. May I send you the info? That weeds out a lot of those people from the very beginning who simply say yes because it's a Facebook invite, or they say maybe or something like that. And by the way, we count maybes as no's generally, and we don't count them towards our goal of getting 15 yeses. On average, though, you will boost your attendance rate when you do two things. Number one is send reminder messages. And number two is when you use guest bios, which are my secret weapon to boost attendance and really get people excited. They're just little blurbs. For example, I would say, Clint runs a podcast. He lives in Vancouver, but he's thinking about moving to Texas. Ask him about his podcast. They're simple little blurbs about your guests that you may know simply socially. They're not like Forbes 30 under 30. You don't have to ask for their permission to review or edit them. They could be as simple as, John is my neighbor. He has 2 dogs. This is the first time I've hung out with him. Okay? They're little blurbs just to give people conversational access points, to get them excited to know the other people that are coming and attending your party. It is a secret weapon to turbocharge your attendance rate and the new connections that happen at your party.
And one of the things I appreciate how you're doing this is similar to the specificity in your messages that you send people. You're not using the spray and pray, I just put a Facebook event and send it to my 1,500 Facebook friends. You're targeting this many people in the core group. I got 5. Now I'm going to the great guests and I'm targeting these specific people. So all the way through, the right word that's jumping out at me is you're being very intentional each step of the way.
Yes. Super intentional. Super intentional. And I've heard from people that say, wow, this RSVP method that you have really works. It's a complete game changer. What do? I never blast someone the link to RSVP before asking their permission. Hey, can I send you the info? Right? So I sort of even double opt in. I have them opt in to receiving my party details. How often do you just get blasted with an invite? You haven't heard from these people. I remember I heard from a friend of mine in New York City, and he had invited me to a big New Year's bash, and he used one of these online platforms that I won't name, and it went to spam. And so it's like 3 days before New Year's. He's like, bro, I haven't heard. Are you coming to my party or not? I was like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. And it was in my spam. He just blasted out this mass invite to everybody. I hadn't heard from him. So by inviting people on a one-to-one basis, it also feels more personalized. They feel selected to be there. And that's really special, and it helps boost the attendance rate as well.
Has anyone ever said to you that you approach cocktail parties the way a person who's serious about their newsletters approaches newsletters. Like the open rates, the hit rates, like the analytics, open rates, hit rates, acceptance rates, double opt-in. Like it's very newsletter.
That makes sense. I've run a friends newsletter that I send to my friends. I call it my friends newsletter, which, by the way, everyone should have a friends newsletter. I learned about because my parents send like an annual letter to their friends. Did you grow up in a household like that where your folks send out?
No, but it's incredible hearing it. I love it already.
Yeah, it's just like, like a Christmas tradition. They send like a Christmas card, but with that card, they include a letter. And maybe because they were in the military, I was born on an Air Force base and they move around a lot. And so I started to send a similar letter to my friends once a year, and then I turned it to once a quarter. It's just, stuff I'm reading, cool stuff. I try to add value. But I've been thinking a lot about newsletters. And yeah, we can apply that same level of intentionality and analytics. I've done all of that for you. So if you buy my book, or even if you just read my blog, you don't want to buy my book, you can learn about how to host a good event. And through experimentation, I found that there are things that you can learn to do well, and nobody really teaches us how to host a good event. It's hard for me to go to unstructured events these days because I just get frustrated.
Well, I didn't even notice, and I might have missed it, when you said, think of my name, and here's the things we do. I might have missed that in the book. I didn't miss the first two parts of it, though. So name tag, someone's going to be like, Nick, like I haven't worn a name tag since kindergarten. Like we're not at a convention. Why name tags? So why to you are the name tags so important at the event?
The name tags serve like a sports jersey to show that we're all on the same team. They show that there's no cliques at the party, and they make it a safe space to go meet and talk to new people. It's as simple as that. The name tag makes it easier to create new conversations. And even if you think, oh, all my friends know each other, I can guarantee you that while you may know everybody, think about your friend who brings their partner, their significant other. They don't know everybody. Think about that new neighbor that you want to be generous and invite. They don't know everybody's name. You're only as strong as the weakest link at your party. And so we wear the name tags, even if you know everybody's names, it's to make your guests feel more welcome. And especially for introverts, for people with social anxiety, the more that they can know what to expect, the more confidence that they'll have in coming to your party. So I like to tell them, I'll even include a little breakdown of an agenda. I'll list those guest bios to tell them who else is coming. And I hear from people that they say, wow, those guest bios were really helpful. I got an idea of who I'd be talking to, who might be at the party. Giving and setting expectations is a pro move for professional party hosting. To build your network, to make new friends, if you can set the expectations, you'll be successful in your hosting journey.
And then the second one that someone's going to, the I in Nick, someone's going to be like, well, I haven't done icebreakers since college. Like icebreakers at a cocktail party, what are we doing here? But you have very specific reasons for why we're doing them and when we're doing them and what we're doing in each of them.
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on icebreakers. Now, I've led thousands of icebreakers. When I did my museum tours, the goal was for me to get people talking in a museum because the number one indicator of success as a tour guide is, do people ask you questions, right? Do I go from sage on the stage to like trusted confidant, friend that you're just hanging out with? And that would happen if I could get people to ask questions and talk. But in a museum, it's stuffy. Nobody wants to talk. It's quiet. There's social ideas. So I learned that I had to run icebreakers to get people to loosen up and just start asking me questions and talking. The same thing applies at a party. I need to encourage people to strike up new conversations. I need to give them a conversational crutch to go talk to somebody across the room and not just the person next to them at the bar. To do that, I found that you use a series of escalating icebreakers. At the beginning of a party, you'll use a green level icebreaker, an easy one, when there's no rapport and the room's not warmed up. The one that I like, that I suggest, is say your name, say what you do for work or how you spend your days, and then tell me one of your favorite things to eat for breakfast. Now, That breakfast question works because everybody eats breakfast, or they don't. They choose not to because they do intermittent fasting. But it's top of their mind. It generally has a positive connotation. It's easy to think of. It's fast to say. And most importantly, there's no judgment. There's no judgment around what you do for breakfast. And so I like that one because it's fast, it's quick, and it's easy. And it works well at the beginning of your party. Now, at the end of your party, I use a different style of icebreaker called an advanced icebreaker that's additive to the room, that makes everybody feel smarter, has new ideas, and encourages discussion. But I only do that after you've warmed up the room, built up some rapport and trust. The icebreakers are really a conversational crutch. That's what they're for, just to get people talking and meeting new people.
And have the number of people that have answered with intermittent fasting gone up exponentially since you went to Austin?
I think so. I think it probably is. I saw it in New York about 5 years ago, starting then, I skip breakfast. So I give a sort of acknowledgement. But the funniest story was this woman in New York. She was a grizzled fashion writer. She had bangs and straight black hair. She's wearing all black. And she was obviously she ran away from home at 13 and grew up, on the mean streets of New York. And we're going around, say your name, say what you do for work and your favorite thing for breakfast. And it comes to her and she just kind of stood out at the party. And she said, "My name's Diane. For work, I'm a fashion writer. And my favorite thing for breakfast is cigarettes." And everybody kind of laughed. And it really just showed that she was self-aware. And she laughed as well. She kind of chuckled. But we do those icebreakers because they give an expression of somebody's personality. The person who says, "I eat waffles with blueberries," you might go to them for sweet dessert ideas. The person says, "Oh, I skip breakfast, I do intermittent fasting." Maybe you talk to them about health stuff. It's just a way for us to signal a little bit to the room of who's there. And I think that's important. When you go to a party, I don't know, for you, Clint, if you went to a party and you never knew all night that somebody else hosted a podcast, maybe you don't want to talk to other podcasters, but I think maybe I would want to if I hosted a podcast. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter what it is. It's Carnegie. As soon as you know what someone else's breakfast, what someone else is into, those bios, it's like you're going to zone in and be like, "Oh, I want to go talk to this person about their thing." Because your thing is your thing. You don't need to talk. I'd rather go probe and ask questions and be like, "Oh, Nick's into this? Let me go talk with Nick and ask him about that because he probably loves talking about it."
Right. And it's hard to find that out. I think that's what I get frustrated about. At a normal party, I'm left to bump into people by pure physical happenstance. That's how the introductions happen.
Yes.
And I want to be able to know who's in the room. Who should I talk to? I don't know. Is that selfish of me? Is that weird? I want to know who to talk to.
No, I think it's genius. And it's setting everybody up for success as opposed to coming in cold. Like you're coming in and being like, "Oh, here's 10 people, 15 people. Here's 5 who they have a passion that I find super intriguing and I want to learn more." Because you might talk to all 15. You might only talk to 5 people. If you talk to 5 new people, that's a pretty successful night, I would think.
Yeah, that's huge. That's crazy. And so that's what happens at these parties, by the way. We briefly touch on the idea of building your network of acquaintances. The purpose of these parties is for your friends to meet new people. You'll get to meet these new people as well. But your friends will have, let's say, 5, 7, 8 new conversations to meet new people. Realize that doesn't happen at most events. You will talk to 2, 3, maybe 4 people. At these parties, because of the icebreakers that break up conversations and start new ones, all the guests will talk to a lot of different people. That's what makes these parties successful. That's what happens at the party is there's all these new conversations happening. And I think that's really important that you go to cocktail parties to meet new people. You can build those relationships in follow-up later on.
And you mentioned something there. I've heard it a couple times now, is network of acquaintances. How do you view a network of acquaintances, and why is it so important that that's what we're building, not just at the party, but in life?
Science shows that we find out about the best new opportunities. Maybe you've heard this, not through our closest friends, but through our weak ties. That's these social connections we have that are not our best friends. They're somebody you worked with 3 years ago, the neighbor at the old apartment you lived in. They're people that are loose connections. They're weak ties. And they're ones that often expose us to new jobs, new opportunities, and new partners. We find out about some of the best things in life through those people. And I believe that having a large network of acquaintances can expose you to more opportunities. You'll get invited to more parties. Your social calendar will fill up. You'll find out about new job opportunities, everything. This is the benefit of building a network in an authentic way.
I love it. And now I want to build it. So much fun. So now we're going to throw the party. We've got our guests. We've got our invites. We know we're going to do icebreakers. We know we're going to give name tags. How do we get through the awkward zone?
The awkward zone is that thing that happens in the first 10 or 20 minutes of every party. And you get through it by, number one, delegating duties. The first thing anybody says when they show up to a party and they're early, they say, oh, how can I help? By knowing as a host how you can assign duties to people, it will help you enlist them to be invested in the success of your party. Things I like to ask people, the duties that I delegate are, I ask somebody, hey, will you help out at the self-serve bar? When somebody comes, can you help them? Just the first few people, will you help them mix a drink or find some? You don't have to know how to make a drink, but just help them get a cup and some ice. Number two, in the wintertime, put somebody in charge of coat checks. Hey, when people come, can you help the first few people to hang up their jackets? Number three, assign a party photographer. Oh, you know what? I'm always so busy at parties, I forget to take photos. Will you help me out and take a bunch of pictures and send them to me afterwards? Party pro tip, I will usually ask 2 people to do this. One person usually forgets, so they get busy. And I love seeing photos afterwards. There's a whole list of things that you can ask people to help you out with. But that's one of the first things I'll do for the first few guests, to create like a team to help me out to make the party successful. So that's number one. And then once there are about 4 or 5, 6 people, that's when I'll do that first icebreaker that I mentioned, the practice icebreaker, where it's almost like I let them in on a little secret. I say, hey, look, we're going to do this icebreaker later, but I want to practice now. And I do a quick icebreaker with that group to take it from unstructured uncertainty to structure uncertainty, and then I break the ice and I let them go, and new conversations start and new people arrive. And doing that icebreaker helps you break out of the awkward zone into the party.
And so in the book, you give an exact schedule on how to do that and what we're doing in each one and what our three questions are, the 3x3 method. I love that. So now we've got our guests, we've had the killer cocktail party, and you said, hey, the K is kick them out at the end, which seemed really important because you want to be known as, hey, it's 7 to 9. Like, you show up, you have a good time, you meet people, and then you're out. You get to go home and live your life. That's why these parties, you want to come to them because they don't get in the way. They're efficient and a great experience. How do we kick people out in a generous way?
So, number one, just like the name tags and the icebreakers, which you have to mention to people in the invitations and the RSVP and reminder messages, when you mention name tags and icebreakers, you won't have any resistance to doing them at the party. Well, the same thing happens with the end time. Most parties will list a start time, but not an end time. And when you list an end time to your party and you communicate the end time, just, date, time, right? You list the end time there. People have an idea, oh, this is different. This party will be ending at a certain time. That helps them to have the expectation that it will be ending. But here's how to end your party. 15 minutes before the scheduled time to end, you'll make a last call, right? Hey, everybody, the party's scheduled to end in 15 minutes. Grab a last drink if you want to. Say hi to somebody new. We'll start to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for coming. At the scheduled end time, I turn the music off and I turn the lights up. I thank everybody for coming, and I just start to tidy. I start to clean up my house a little bit, and people get the point and they start to make their way out. Now, a party pro tip is that occasionally you'll have people who want to talk to you after the end time. They say, oh, Clint, I haven't talked to you all night, dude. I would love to catch up. Dude, I haven't seen you in like a year. Thanks for inviting me. Let's hang out now that people are leaving. And what I say to them is I say, George, I'd really love to catch up. I'm so glad that you came. Thank you so much. Look, I got to stay on track for my goals tonight and I need to tidy. But can I call you tomorrow? I would love to catch up and I would really like to talk to you. May I call you tomorrow, please? That makes them feel seen. For anyone that's trying to hold you down, like stay focused with your goals. And here's why. Because the biggest benefits in life come when you can make hosting a habit. When you can start to host an event like this every 6 to 8 weeks, you will go through life snowballing, collecting interesting new people who you get to invite to your parties. And I need you to end your party on time so you'll want to do this again. So you'll see that it can be easy and that you can repeat it and make it a habit. That's why it's so important to me to end the party on time so that you wake up the next day refreshed and energized and proud of all that you accomplished. Does that sound cheesy? Is that too cheesy? It's just, I'm so passionate about it.
No, I love the idea of making it a habit. And it's something that I definitely, my wife stopped working full time for other people a few months ago. And so I think, we're now at a point in our life where this would be a great thing to do every 6 to 8 weeks with parents of kids that our sons go to school with, people that we find interesting, colleagues, just start to regularly every 6 to 8 weeks have a cocktail party, bring people over, network, build that. And it's not just for you, it's helping your friends build acquaintances and building a wider circle for everybody. So I think it's absolutely good to be able to keep it tight, on point. And the key is with everything, and you talked about with habits, is you want it to be repeatable. And so if it's easy to do, easy to set up, easy to be successful, you're going to want to do it.
That's the key thing, is how can we make it easy and how can I make it fun? I don't know. I feel a little bit cocky that these days anybody can convince somebody to host one party. Anybody can write a book to say, oh my gosh, here's how to throw the best New Year's Eve party or something. But I'm truly trying to help people to learn that the biggest benefits come when you always have your next party on the calendar. The next person you meet, you're like, oh, that person's interesting. You say, hey, I'm hosting a cocktail party in a couple of weeks. Can I send you the information? You have an easy close, an easy next step. Because Clint, I would guess that with you and your wife, you meet an interesting couple. And what's the next step? Really, for couples, especially people with kids, the only next step that would happen is either one, a play date, or two, you'd go out to dinner with them. And both of those are scheduling and logistically complicated, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had a walk this morning for almost 3 hours with someone who I probably haven't talked to in 20 years. And someone mutual reconnected us and said, hey, you guys actually live in the vicinity of each other. It took us a month to schedule a walk, and I had a blast. And I would love to have been able to say, hey, Mark, I'm hosting a cocktail party in 3 weeks. Would you and your wife love to come over? And we can continue this conversation. It's 2 hours. Now, if they have kids, this is a bit of a fun one, because as we get older, there's a potential for that. What do you say in that situation? How do you handle that? Because that could be maybe the only wrinkle.
So if there's kids, I've written an article, which I'd love to include this in the show notes, on how to host a party with kids. And I have a couple ideas. Number one, if you can afford it, the pro move is to hire a babysitter and offer childcare at your party. Number two, if that's not an option for you, then to host a simultaneous kids party where the kids are in another room watching a movie, having snacks, but they are in a separate area of the home. Now that's for younger kids. If your kids are older, then you can involve them in the Icebreakers perhaps. You can put them to work with name tags or something like that. But for younger kids, we found, and I have a huge article on the website with all these pro tips that I've collected from people who've hosted parties with their kids on things that they have found that are successful. But I want to give the caveat to say that this book was written for me at a time when I and many of my friends did not have kids. And so you as a parent can use your own judgment based on what I found in doing these interviews with others to make a successful event.
So we will link to that in the show notes. And then where can our listeners find you, Nick?
So the name of my book is called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. And I've written articles, which I'll send these to the show notes, how to plan a networking event, how to host a happy hour, how to host a housewarming party. Here's what I want you to come away with this. Any social event that you host can benefit from a little bit of structure that will help the other attendees make new friends. And today, just like Clint and I were talking, we're spending so much time, we're digitally saturated that everybody can use a new friend. And you can learn how to help people do that, and you'll receive massive benefits from it. You can find my book online. It'll tell you the perfect party formula. The name of my book is The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. It's for sale on Amazon. I recorded the audiobook myself in studio. I'm really proud of the audiobook, available on Audible and Apple Books. And then I post a lot on social media. So I'm at Nick Gray News on Instagram and all the social medias.
And do you have time for a final 4 question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, let's do it. What's one book you've read that's had the most influence on your life?
I really did like Atomic Habits. I was inspired with my own book, though. I'll give one other one called The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker. While my book is extremely tactical and practical, her book is more theoretical about why we gather and the things that we do.
Okay, The Art of Gathering. And then what's on the bookshelf right now? What's happening for Nick?
What's happening for me? What am I reading?
Yeah. You want to read more this year.
So have you heard about the book, The 3-Body Problem?
No.
The 3-Body Problem, a lot of people talk about, and it's a fiction book that was very popular amongst folks. And the first few times I tried to read it, I was unable to. I just couldn't get it to stick. Well, I forced myself to read it on vacation recently, and now I'm obsessed with the trilogy. I'm finishing up the 3rd book in the series.
The 3-Body Problem. Okay, I've got to look this up. What's one thing you've spent less than $1,000 on in the last year that you wish you'd bought sooner?
I recently got a robot vacuum, but not just any vacuum. It's made by a company called Roborock. And I've had, iRobot and Roombas and stuff like that just, they didn't live up to the hype. I'm obsessed with this one. It's the Roborock S6 or whatever. It was $200 or $300 on Amazon. It has onboard LiDAR, and it maps my house, and it just sweeps hardwood floors and vacuums the carpets. It's incredible. I'm obsessed with it.
Does it do it by itself? Because we've had one of the ones you've mentioned for 3 years, and I don't think it's come out of the box. And my wife explained that because you have to map the whole house yourself.
No, this thing does. It's a absolute game changer. Look at the reviews online. I've convinced several of my friends to buy it, and they love it.
The name one more time.
It's Roborock, R-O-B-O-R, Roborock, R-O-C-K. And they're the ones who make it. And the one piece of advice I would say is do not get you don't have to, but don't think that you need the one that mops the floors. My sister bought the one that she thought, I'll get it to mop my floors. And the reality is she's just too lazy to keep refilling the water. And so most people just use it for sweeping and vacuuming.
Yeah, just a simple sweep and vacuum is perfect. Okay, I'm on it.
Simple sweep and vacuum, and it's a great thing. It's a game changer.
And it'll map itself. I like that. And it won't fall down the stairs?
It won't fall down. It's very smart. It's very good. It's really good software. That's what I love best about it, that the software that runs it seems way smarter than all these other dumb robots.
Okay, I'm going to check that out. And because the show is the Growth Guide, and that is new, we're converting from the Pursuit of Learning to the Growth Guide. And what is a mindset shift, new habit, or behavior that you've shifted in the last year that's been significant in your growth, Nick?
There's 2 things I think about. Number 1 is the concept of giving before you ask for anything. And that's at the core of the fundamentals of the 2-Hour Cocktail Party, is that you will build your network faster and bigger and better by giving the gift of a party invitation. Everyone wants to be invited to a party. When you can give that to build your network, you'll build it faster more than ever. The second thing that's more recent for me is I've been trying to go outside to get sunlight within the first 30 or 45 minutes of waking up. Even if I just go outside for a couple sips of my green tea, to get that sunlight in my eyes, I have heard that there's big benefits to it.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. It apparently is one of the better things for then having a good sleep at night and regulating our sleep. And I have a sleep expert coming on in a few weeks or months. It all starts to blur together, Nick, but I will ask him if that is indeed true after I read his book. So we went pretty wide and deep on the book. Don't want to give away it all because it's literally a strategic, tactical handbook on how to do this. Recognizing that, is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure the listener gets today?
I think the last thing I want to mention is that for any budget in any home size, if you live in a small apartment, the parties are more exciting. If you don't have a lot of money, know it can be done for under $75. These things aren't expensive, and everyone wants to know someone who brings people together. And the secret is anyone can do it. It just takes a simple 2-hour cocktail party.
Oh, I love it. Thank you very much, and we will end it there.
Thanks for having me.
If you like the podcast, you'll love our new newsletter, The Growth Guide. Every Thursday, straight to your inbox, with the goal to help you be better, achieve more, and become financially free. Check it out at our website, thegrowth.guide. Subscribe and learn more.